Tonight on Politicat, checking in with ASG, what student government has been up to in wake of the pandemic.
And 2020 on the horizon, key races and issues we're watching.
Plus, a lack of credibility in the White House. Alex Harrison tackles this week's final word.
All that and more coming up on Politicat.
It's your politics
right now.
Good evening and welcome to Politicat. I'm Justin Sweetwood.
And I'm Joey Safchik. We begin tonight with major on-campus news. Last month, ASG President Catherine Conte resigned from her position, becoming the second ASG president to do so in the last 3 years. Executive Vice President Juan Zuniga is leading now, and doing so during one of the most challenging quarters in Northwestern's history. Justin and I caught up with Juan to learn about how the transition has been going and what ASG has been up to during fall quarter.
All right, Juan, so firstly, I just want to talk to you about the resignation of former ASG President Catherine Conte. What impact did that have on you and ASG, on your and ASG's efforts at the beginning of one of the most difficult and uncertain quarters in recent memory?
So I think, I don't want to say it really didn't have too much of an impact because it most certainly does. I think right now we all kind of miss Catherine a bit, just too, because it's at least in ASG and on our exec board, we're a team, we're collaborators. And when we don't have people to collaborate with, it's definitely we're losing out as a community. But in that sense too, we also have that support there. At least for me personally, I have my chief of staff and then the executive officer of justice and inclusion. So Elizabeth Sverti and Daniel Rodriguez, respectively. And then too, the rest of the board, everyone's been, as supportive as they can be to try and spread the weight and the work that we're trying to do this quarter out across the entire team.
You stepped into this role during the COVID era, but is there non-COVID legislation or policies that are being discussed as well while you're looking towards the future?
Yeah, there are. I will say, I think Izzy Double, the previous ASG president, put it really well. This entire year is essentially going to be emergency response in a lot of ways, and it makes it really hard to focus on those future points. I will say a lot of the stuff that our platform had and a lot of the stuff that is there has most certainly pivoted, but I don't think it's off the table at all. For instance, one of the big things that we really wanted to work with or work on this year was the student leadership stipend, which essentially would allow students from lower and middle income families to use hours they're working towards a student organization and receive a grant that pays out throughout the quarter. So that way they don't have to choose between a job or doing something that they love and benefit from and want to share with other people.
Juan, how have you been able to stay in touch with the student body and hear their concerns during a virtual quarter, and how are you addressing their most pressing concerns?
Yeah, so I think this is a really good question. I think at least for me, right now our biggest tool is just email, Slack, and just trying to put ourselves out there as an ear to the ground as an organization. And a lot of the times we miss places on campus, but part of that too is we're trying to actively search out voices who haven't been heard and haven't been listened to. It is challenging in the sense where we no longer have that physical presence on campus, but now too it's we've gone through recruitment. There's been some linkage there, so hopefully we now have a much broader network to really start collecting feedback and collecting issues that students are facing.
So Juan, I want to talk for a minute about next quarter. The university said it's set to announce by early November whether first and second years can return to campus for winter quarter. Based on what you've seen during fall quarter, do you think that Northwestern can bring these students back in a safe and healthy way?
There are improvements that do need to be made in terms of testing and just in terms of housing and making sure that again students have the support they need. But from the conversations that we've had, it seems the university is taking a lot of those things into consideration to figure out how to bring people back safely. But again, too, I'm 21 years old. I'm a political science major. I don't have a very like strong sense of like what is a good practice, especially too when like we've been learning. I will say Northwestern has been in a unique position where it was able to see how other school reopenings were prior to having like classes start on campus here in Evanston. I think it will be very dependent on us as a community to hold each other accountable, and like Northwestern, and for us as a community and a student government also hold Northwestern accountable to make sure that like they're providing resources and like not throwing people into the wind because they want to like make money off of, you know, people being on campus.
Do you feel like it's your responsibility as a 21-year-old, as a political science major, to convey and serve as a liaison about student concerns relating to testing and safety measures to university officials?
100%. I think like a lot of it, like on basically every agenda that we've had with JPK this entire year, or I guess term, since May, really like every single time something COVID related comes up, 100%. Specifically with testing, like we've been asking about like the testing processes, the questions they're asking, why they're asking certain questions, to make sure that like students are like not like, because it's like, you know, since you have to be tested if you want to come on campus, like to make sure that students aren't being like forced to, for instance, like out themselves, or like put themselves into a dangerous environment where like they don't feel comfortable, but like also too should have like equitable access to like the university spaces.
NNM will be sure to keep you updated on major ASG developments during the year. Turning now to the 2020 race, Megan Leibowitz has more on a Democratic challenger's efforts to unseat Lindsey Graham. Take a look.
With the 2020 election around the corner, Politicat is taking a closer look at some of the tightest races. Today, will Republican Senator Lindsey Graham be able to hang on to his South Carolina seat? Graham is a third-term senator, a staunch ally of President Trump, and he won his last Senate election by 15 percentage points. So who is his Democratic rival? Jamie Harrison was previously an aide to Congressman James Clyburn, and he served as the chair of the South Carolina Democratic Party. And now Harrison is giving Graham a run for his money, literally. Harrison raised over $57 million during the past 3 months. He broke the fundraising record for a quarter by about $20 million. So what do the polls show? One recent poll that surveyed voters in late September shows that the candidates are neck and neck, with Harrison ahead by only 1 point. Now we know a lot can change between now and November 3rd, so this race is worth keeping your eye on. Joey and Justin.
Thanks, Megan. According to a recent House Judiciary report, the apps and services you use every day might be breaking antitrust law. Jason Harward has the story.
After more than a year of investigation, the House Judiciary Committee earlier this month released a 451-page report detailing the anti-competitive practices of tech giants Amazon, Facebook, Apple, and Google.
You know, in the 19th century, we had the robber barons. In the 21st century, we got the cyber barons. And we want to make sure that the extraordinary power and wealth that you've been able to amass is not used against the interests of democracy and human rights around the world.
To learn more about this antitrust report, I talked to Matt Stoller, who spent his entire career writing about corporate power, monopoly, and democracy. One of his major points is that there's been an overall shift in the economy toward monopoly and concentration of wealth and power.
So starting in the late 1970s, early 80s, our policymakers started to eliminate the anti-monopoly provisions in antitrust law, and then eventually in telecommunications and banking and media regulations, a whole series of regulatory sectors. And so you've seen a roll up in power across the economy, and that's had a number of consequences. You know, damage to democratic institutions, but also lower wages, more wealth inequality.
One example of an anti-competitive tactic is Google's monopoly of YouTube's massive ad market.
That's anti-competitive. It's about creating like leverage in one area, using leverage in one area, YouTube, to create a monopoly in another area in advertising software. If you separated the two, then YouTube would have no incentive to do that anymore. But it wouldn't solve all the problems with YouTube, but it would certainly solve a lot of the problems that come from integrating dominant platforms with one another.
For the future, the question remains, Can the slow, deliberative pace of legislation keep up with the most advanced corporations in human history? For Politicat, I'm Jason Harward.
Thanks, Jason. And after the break, Zach Miller is back with this week's Money Minute. Stay tuned.
At Northwestern, we're Wildcats in every way.
Northwestern break right through that. With our colors flying, we will cheer you all to go. Go you Northwestern, fight for victory, sweet victory, for the fame of our fair name, and go Northwestern, win that game. Go Cats!
Welcome back to Politicat. In the months leading up to each election, there's always a cloud of uncertainty hanging over Wall Street. Zach Miller has more on what the market should expect post-November 3rd.
Thanks, Joey. As of October, stock markets have mostly recovered from the pandemic. The S&P 500 index of the largest 500 companies in the U.S. peaked in early September and remains high, much higher than its pre-coronavirus record. Now, all eyes are looking forward to the 2020 election. The next president is going to have a strong impact on where the markets go next, but it's hard to say which candidate is the best for business. Markets are hard to please. They love tax cuts, but they hate trade wars. Markets like soft-spoken presidents and quiet elections, but they don't like new regulations. For right now, all of that is just background noise. With 19 days left until the election, stimulus is king. The key ingredient is speed. The unemployment rate is still 7.9%, more than double what it was before the pandemic. With federal pandemic unemployment assistance slated to end on December 31st, many Americans are relying on the next round of stimulus to put food on the table. Right now, Congress is gridlocked. President Trump has signaled that he wants to wait on stimulus talks until after the election to strengthen his bargaining position. But nobody really knows what a Trump stimulus would look like or how much money it would contain. Biden has floated passing a $1 trillion stimulus package in January, with an additional $3 trillion to be spent over the next 10 years. But if Republicans keep a hold of the Senate, that could make his economic plan an uphill battle. And just like the rest of us, markets are getting anxious. For Money Minute, I'm Zach Miller. Next up, a look at how the 2020 election is shaking up campaign finance from Talia Kuhlman and Jason Harward.
Political campaigns at the national level certainly are not cheap, but the meteoric rise in online donations driven by social media is changing the political calculus of candidates across the aisle. Take Act Blue, the online fundraising go-to for Democrats reaching grassroots donors. In the 3 days after Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg passed, Act Blue raised over $160 million. NU student and member of NU for Biden, Simone Perez, credits populist energy with the growth of online grassroots fundraising.
I think more Americans, along with kind of like those populist waves with like Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump, are more inclined to donate. I would just imagine that Bernie Sanders' populist message has helped bring less engaged voters pre-2020, 2016 into this fold.
The increase in voter outreach possibilities online is great for candidates who benefit from online celebrity, such as Jamie Harrison or Amy McGrath. But without online notoriety, as is the case with most other Senate challengers, fundraising remains an uphill battle, especially as elections become increasingly expensive.
Working people donating is fine, but oh, how I wish it just wasn't the case. I just wish that, so other nations have like a certain amount that candidates can spend in order to run an election, but we have this sort of free-for-all.
Without meaningful campaign finance reform, the price of admission to federal office will continue to balloon. For Politicat, I'm Jason Harward.
One of the biggest controversies leading up to the 2020 election is the nomination and potential confirmation of Amy Coney Barrett to the Supreme Court. For more on that, here's Gabby Coriati and Julia Richardson.
President Trump's nomination of Amy Coney Barrett to the Supreme Court has caused much controversy. Senate hearings are taking place this week. I spoke with Warren Sneed, a PhD candidate in Northwestern's political science department, about the nomination. First, he spoke about this nomination in comparison to Merrick Garland's nomination by President Obama.
Both nominations would result, or just Judge Garland's situation would have resulted in a shift of power in the court.
There's also been speculation about whether Democrats will pack the court upon Barrett's confirmation.
I don't think it would be shocking if the Democratic Party with United Government in 2021 sought to add seats.
Sneed also referred to the confirmation process as political theater and a partisan strategy more than anything.
The Republicans are trying to emphasize Judge Barrett's personal life, the fact that she is a mother, things to make her seem sympathetic and kind of reduce the image of if she's on the court, she's going to do these horrible things, and that's what the Democrats are harping on.
Sneed does not believe that much will be able to hinder Barrett's confirmation. However, some Senate races may be up in the air.
And I think what you might see is Judge Barrett isn't really on the ballot in the Senate vote, but you might see that certain senators lose or hold onto their seats based on how they perform on the floor of the Senate.
From Politicat, I'm Julia Richardson.
And coming up, Zach Kessel gives us his take on what to watch for in the next presidential debate.
At Northwestern, we're Wildcats in every way.
Cheer you all to go. Go you Northwestern, fight for the sweet victory, for the fame of our fair name, and go Northwestern, win that game. Go Cats!
Tonight was supposed to be the second presidential debate, but after President Trump tested positive for the coronavirus and then refused to participate in a virtual debate, we won't be seeing the candidates spar on the same stage tonight. But what does that mean for the rest of the 2020 race? Here's NNN's Zach Kessel.
Thanks, Justin. Last Friday, after days of back and forth between the Trump and Biden campaigns, the Commission on Presidential Debates canceled the second of its events of this general election campaign. The commission decided to replace tonight's planned in-person debate with one conducted virtually after news of President Trump's positive coronavirus test broke. But the Trump campaign refused to participate in a virtual debate, saying they would, quote, pass on this sad excuse to bail out Joe Biden and do a rally instead. The Trump campaign later proposed rearranging the debate schedule, moving the second debate to October 22nd and rescheduling the planned third debate from its original October 22nd date to October 29th. The Biden campaign responded saying, quote, Trump's erratic behavior does not allow him to rewrite the calendar and pick new dates of his choosing. As for the status of the October 22nd debate, it will likely take place as scheduled, meaning we'll have one more opportunity to see the candidates go toe-to-toe. Now, what does this all mean? Well, Trump needs another debate more than Biden. The race has been remarkably stable since the former vice president clinched the Democratic nomination, and polling done after the first debate between the two has shown that Biden's lead is only growing. The Trump campaign has calculated that it needs to keep focus off the pandemic and seems to believe the best way to do so is by getting Trump back out on the trail. But the people showing up to his rallies aren't the ones he needs to win in order to stay in office. The people going to his events are voting for him anyway. He needs undecided voters, the ones who broke for him in 2016, the ones who tuned into last month's street brawl of a debate, watched Trump interrupt Biden and moderator Chris Wallace incessantly, and decided they'd vote for Biden, or perhaps more importantly, not vote for either in a bid to end the chaos that has been the Trump presidency. The office of the president is, as Theodore Roosevelt put it, the bully pulpit, the platform from which to advance an agenda or message. President Trump, as the incumbent, has been offered opportunity after opportunity to shake things up in this race and has taken advantage of none. The chance he has left to swing any remaining undecided voters his way is to participate in another debate. Let's move to what we should look for on the 22nd. President Trump's advisors will likely impress upon him not to conduct himself the way he did last time. Watch for Trump to allow Biden to speak for longer periods of time. Biden has a well-documented history of verbal gaffes, and it's easy to see why taking advantage of his stumbles might be the only way the Trump campaign believes their guy can recover any ground. We should also look to Trump to try to drive a wedge between Biden and the progressive wing of the Democratic Party. He tried to do so during the last debate, accusing Biden of having alienated the left. Trying to corner him into giving some tough answers on the issues could cause intra-party tensions to flare up at a bad time. Of course, Trump could go in the opposite direction. He could double down on his initial debate strategy, interrupting Biden and the moderator, trying to fluster Biden and goad him into firing back, and continuing to call for legal action against his political opponents, as he's been doing for much of the past week. Donald Trump needs the debate much more than Biden does. The president has constantly trailed his opponent and desperately needs something to give. Though it's unlikely anything substantial will change, the last debate will be Trump's last stand. Now we go to Alex Harrison for tonight's final word.
Thanks, Zach. Remember when everyone thought the New York Times releasing President Trump's tax returns would be the biggest news before the election? Well, just a week later, we got an even bigger surprise, truly befitting of 2020. Just before midnight on October 1st, President Trump announced via Twitter that he and First Lady Melania had tested positive for COVID-19. This came after an announcement earlier the same day that senior counselor Hope Hicks had tested positive as well. He was taken by helicopter the very next day to Walter Reed Medical Center and admitted for the weekend. In the 2 weeks since, the public has been left with many more questions than answers, as the president turned his term-long struggle against transparency up to an 11. Despite the Trump administration's best efforts at controlling the narrative around his health, information contradicting the president's assurances of good health has continuously leaked out, often from less than conventional sources. Take, for example, Chief of Staff Mark Meadows. A video of Meadows giving an off-the-record confession to press on Saturday, October 3rd was leaked, saying that, quote, "The president's vitals over the last 24 hours were very concerning. We are still not on a clear path to a full recovery." This statement reportedly infuriated the president, prompting him and his team to release a video of their own that night, where the president said he was feeling, quote, "much better now," and would be back soon and finish the campaign. Yet since being discharged from Walter Reed on Monday, October 5th, Trump's condition has remained unclear. Triumphant videos of him taking off his mask and saluting a departing Marine One were juxtaposed with videos of him appearing to have difficulty breathing in the week following his return to the White House. One unusual source had much to say about his return. Claudia Conway, the daughter of former White House counselor Kellyanne Conway, took to TikTok on October 5th to rebuke Trump's claims of good health. She commented, quote, "He's not doing better. Apparently he is doing badly, and they are doing what they can to stabilize him." She made these claims after leaking her own mother's diagnosis just days earlier. In addition, Navy commander and official physician to President Trump, Sean Conley, initially hid the president's use of supplemental oxygen and the steroid dexamethasone during his stay at Walter Reed. He claims he didn't inform the public in order to avoid causing alarm about the president's condition. These actions have only intensified the confusion around Trump's health. In particular, his continued use of steroids has caused alarm, as many health professionals warn that their use can cause erratic behavior. On top of that, Trump has made numerous hyperbolic claims since his release, including that he is immune, that he feels better than he has in 20 years, and that he would, during a rally in Florida, walk out into the crowd and, quote, "kiss the guys and the beautiful women." Such bizarre statements make it all the more difficult to believe the most recent claim. On Monday, October 12th, Conley announced that Trump had tested negative for COVID-19 on consecutive days, fully clearing him to once again hold rallies and campaign events. Given all that has been said so far by the president and his administration, it is nearly impossible to know for certain if he is actually negative, or anything else about his health for that matter. Barring another serious decline in his condition, it is likely that the issue will fade to the background in the 19 days between now and Election Day. But in a year as chaotic as 2020, 19 days is more than enough time for an unexpected turn of events.
Thanks so much, Alex. That's all the time we have for tonight, but we'll be back on election night for Northwestern News Network's 2020 election special. For everyone here at Politicat, I'm Joey Safchik.
And I'm Justin Sweetwood. Thanks for watching. Good night.